Hello, my name is Dr. Albert Weinstein, and this is another episode of Facts, Astronomy, and Gravity, a conversation about science. Today's question is, can I go over the history of rocket science? These days, rocket science is synonymous with extreme intelligence. Imagine the thrill of being at a party and overhearing some young co-ed say, "Well, I'm not a rocket scientist." And you get to lean in and say, "Well, I am. I have PhDs in facts, astronomy, gravity, and science, making me one of the only fully accredited fags." Rocket science wasn't always so prestigious. In order to understand its history, we must go all the way back to ancient Egypt and the king of the underworld named Osiris. Osiris, king of the dead and rebirth, had many brothers and sisters. His brother Set crawled out of his mother's stomach. Set was always very grumpy and nasty to Osiris. But his sister Isis fell in love with Osiris immediately, and they had many children. Long story short, Set murdered his brother and chopped him into 14 pieces, one of which being his weenus. Osiris's weenus was thrown into the ocean, and Isis wept. Isis scoured the land looking for Osiris's body after Set killed him. All 14 parts were recovered. Being such a devoted sister and wife, she rebuilt his penis, allowing Osiris to be made whole in the afterlife. After engaging with the posthumous appendage, Isis conceived and birthed Horus, who would go on to kill that nasty Set. What does any of this have to do with rocket science, you might be asking? Well, because Venus worship is a lot older than modern rocketry. In fact, after Osiris, most of what would now be considered rocket science was seen in architecture and masonry. The obelisk began springing up all over the world, reminding countrymen and countrywomen how incredible the Venus was and to give proper respect. Then came a true innovator in the long line of cock gazing, Goddard. Dr. Goddard, with funding from the Guggenheim family, began pushing the limits of Ween wonder and attempted to create a metal Venus with fire shooting out of it to actually shoot up into space. He was mocked by civilized society. Even the most devoted coxman thought he was going too far. Sure, making 500-foot monuments to the festive phallus was standard, but a fire-breathing ween? Well, it wasn't too far for Mr. Jack Parsons, who was rather an exotic cultist type. He was in fact a practitioner of black magic and the occult. Fact. Literally, fact. Parsons loved to recite pagan cock poetry to the sky. Skipping ahead a bit, the Germans turned out to be the premier masters of Ween worship. SS Major Werner von Braun created the A-2 rocket with sheer determination and a lot of homosexual gypsy slaves. The ambition was maddening for these great men. They could see their vision almost fulfilled, and then they would go limp or explode and blast everywhere over and over and over again, as if God was mocking them. Sometimes the Venus wouldn't even launch, but merely shoot its parachute all over itself, sheepishly, and then cower in a corner, alone, in shame. Once, Werner von Braun was asked, "Why did your rocket explode so early? Why can't it last longer?" He replied, "It doesn't happen often, you son of a bitch. It just has a lot on its mind. It's stressed out. Maybe you could put a little effort into it, not be such a bitch all the time." Quote unquote, Werner von Braun. Meanwhile, the Russians were in fierce competition with the Americans in a cock-off. The Russians, known for their vodka consumption, were having a very hard time as well, lasting long, and then routinely would go limp and crash into the Kazakhstan steppe. Functioning as a fertility ritual, all this cock and weenus fire thrusting had a profound impact on the birth rate in America. With every rocket launched into the air, men would feel confident to have some rocket fun of their own. That would all change during the race to space. The public either felt like it was all a lie, or now that the moon had been penetrated, there was really no point in trying. It's already been done. Birth rate collapsed. Never before had weenus and cock magic rocketry been so needed. SpaceX experimented with the big black ween.
In this case, girth is more important than length.
And showed that a penis can be reused and put back in the pants over and over and over again.
How fast this vehicle is moving on the left-hand landing burn.
But the greatest achievement in the history of rocket science came from a little man named Jeff Bezos. The little blue pill called Viagra had given flaccid billionaire Jeff Bezos an idea.
Joining me now, Dave Limp, the CEO of Blue Origin, on the eve of New Glen's maiden flight. Such a big moment.
He was going to make a rocket that looked exactly like a cock, with that elusive clipped head and shaft ridge. And when that blue clipped cock launched, it was as if Osiris's phallus had been located, and Isis could continue copulating with her brother after he died. And that is the history of rocket science. Thank you for listening, and as always, support facts, astronomy, gravity, and science. I'm Dr. Albert Weinstein, and don't forget, fags are the future.